Okay, so thank you, everyone. I think we're a bit behind time, so I want to start since we have such a wonderful guest today. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondence Club, and book breaks are by the Library Committee. We introduce books written by foreigners about Japan. So if you have any idea of any books you'd like to introduce, please contact our librarian. My name is Adrini Kakuchi. I'm a journalist, and I'm part of the Library Committee. So today we have author Michael Thuresson, who's written The Salaryman, and it's a memoir. So he's going to talk about how he became a salaryman. You arrived in 2008, so Michael's been here for a while. Next to him, we have Mr. Ida, and his professional name is Meshida. Am I right? And he's also is involved in Michael's second book, which is going to be also about salaryman and Japanese corporate life. So I think the memo is going to be really interesting, fun, because it's really about life and what you've seen. The book is self-published, and we have copies over there if you want to pick it up. So the evening is open to Michael.
Thank you very much.
By the way, just a quick introduction. Michael's from Chicago.
That's right. I would have forgotten that. Thank you. That's important because there's a chapter in the book that touches on that. Thanks for having me. I'm Mike, a Tokyo-based author. Those are the two books we'll cover today. I published The Salaryman, as she mentioned, self-published it in 2019, and then I released the second version last year with a couple new chapters. And now the first half of the presentation tonight I'll talk about what went into the book, all the stories and real life that I put into it. And it's a lot of US-Japan culture gap, trying to tell it in a light way, but very informative and entertaining at the same time. Slice of life, fair to both sides. And then the second half of tonight, we'll talk about my new book, as she mentioned, Salarymanhood, which is a lot of the same themes of life in here in Tokyo, in Japan, as a foreign salaryman in very traditional companies that I've worked in. But this is a format of a joke book, based on the Japanese poem style of senryu, which are, the sort of the lesser-known sibling of haiku, but very humorous and they cover everyday life. And I'll touch on Meishida's contribution to that, as well as another special guest here. But first, I want to, before I do that, thank the FCCJ for inviting me. This is an incredible honor and treat. The list of people that you have coming here to do things like this is amazing, and I've been here as a guest on a couple of those book breaks, and I want to especially thank Robert Whiting, who was kind enough to endorse The Salaryman after I stalked him at a book event he did. I'm a huge fan of his, and yeah, he was kind enough to invite me to do this. Actually, it's almost full circle. It feels like that I'm sitting here because of him, because the first trip I took to Japan about 20 years ago, on the flight over, I read You Gotta Have Wa on the flight. And what an eye-opener and classic book that was, being an American baseball fan. And I was also a journalist at that time, so I had felt great interest in his writing, and worked at places like the LA Business Journal and magazines like Nikkei Electronics and Japan Inc. magazine here, if you remember that, years ago when they had magazines. So I had the journalism background, and that got me really interested in following his path as a writer about Japan. So yeah, and I also want to thank, before I forget, some readers here tonight are attending who really supported me throughout my self-publishing journey. I want to thank. They know who they are, but especially want to thank them because as a self-published author, you're on your own and you're doing everything yourself. So without real interaction with fans like that, that's what that's all about. So appreciate them. All right, next slide. Already technical difficulties. Should be the. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Delayed reaction. Okay. We're over that, I hope. So I have some other special guests here tonight. First, want to call out my children who are here, 15 and 12, son and daughter, sitting right in front of me. Obviously, they are part of the book, the Salaryman book. There's episodes of the top right picture is me with my daughter when she was little, about 10 years ago, doing my Salaryman dad thing. In a suburban Tokyo Sento, bath, and there she is throwing the yuzu fruit at next door, or Salaryman next to me, trying to relax, disturbing the harmony. But there's another part in the book where my son was little, and the chapter I talk about, of all the things you assimilate to in Japan, and Tokyo especially, is the lack of space, and the importance of learning basho tori, which is stealing a place in line, but while looking polite. It was an art form I learned. And unfortunately with my son, he didn't know that art form at Tokyo Disneyland, and he fell into a fountain because of his, lack of coordination, I guess, but not knowing how to get a place in line without falling into a fountain. A couple other guests here, I should mention Yoshida-san, sitting over here. He was contributed illustrations to the revised version of the Salaryman, and is the main illustrator for the Salarymanhood Senryu joke book. And I wouldn't be here without him contributing that and being patient with me, taking so long to produce the book. And sitting here to my right is Meishida, who I say the same thing. He's been a source of inspiration because he used to be a Salaryman himself, turned English stand-up comedian.
Japanese stand-up comedian.
And he has a great comedy sense, but he also has a Salaryman view on it that helped me understand, what from a different point of view, and that I was being fair to both sides, and told me what's funny and what's not sometimes too. Any other thoughts you had on the book? Was it eye-opening to you, or?
I like your book, You talk about crazy salaryman life. And I used to be a typical Japanese employee, like you. And you actually wrote about kind of meeting stuff, right?
Oh, the endless meetings that you have in a Japanese company.
Because I have the same experience, We had a meeting, okay? And we discussed how to reduce overtime work at 11 p.m. Right? Yeah, that's a salaryman life. Thank you for laughing.
But I'll get into it later when we get into the second half talking about the Senryu book, that he translated all of the English jokes into Japanese, discovering another part of the culture gap, humor, that I wasn't aware of. So that's a very interesting part of the book, I hope, is the differences in American and Japanese humor. I didn't know a lot of this. So he's a man who, I call him sort of the atlas of the humor world. He carries both comedy worlds on his back, English speaking and Japanese speaking, very easily. And so it's a great trait that's really valuable. And he will treat us to a little bit of he had an eye-opening Salaryman act online that I caught that convinced me he was the right translator. And I asked him to stand up and do a little bit of that to show you what I mean a little later.
Is it okay? Okay. It's okay?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Not your usual book break, probably, but it's. I think it'll be an interesting angle on it. Okay, so I want to start. Why did I write this Salaryman book? What went into it? How I did it? And before I dive deep into it, I actually want to mention that I would love to have somebody translate it into Japanese. That would be a treat to be able to share it with a Japanese audience. I think he's proven that with the poem book, to have it in both languages is valuable, and I hope to do the same thing. So if anybody ever had any ideas watching this presentation, I'd love to talk to you about that. So the evolution to writing the book, I should mention, so I came over in 2008, and I went from working in a Los Angeles software startup company where people wore sandals and shorts to work, and CEOs you could call dude, to working for one of the most traditional Japanese companies in Japan, a huge conglomerate. I won't mention the name, but one of the most traditional places you could ever think of working in Japan, and I was the only foreigner. So that 180 is what started this evolution to making the Salaryman book, is how deep that culture clash struck me without any language preparation or even any academic background in Japanese. I came over sort of dropped in, so to speak, into that culture. So that's how the story started, was my shock. But I read the genre of many other memoirs about foreigners living in Japan, read a lot of books about people in a similar spot as me, and it always left me wanting a little bit to know more about what their point of view was before they became fixated on Japan, where they came from, how they grew up. I always felt that part of the story was missing quite a bit in a lot of those memoirs written by foreigners in Japan. I grew up as just an average, everyday Midwestern boy, enjoying the fruits of Japanese electronics and products at that time in the 80s and 90s, Nintendo at the top of the list. And I just remember loving these products and the design of them, and being impressed by them. And this scene is it's from the Senryu book. But I really have a vivid memory with my older brother, that's me, 10 years old, watching our dog go to the bathroom on our Nintendo and breaking it. And it was fried. It just had steam coming out of it. And being so disappointed. And my brother having the idea, why don't we just air it out on the patio all night and see if it works the next day? And sure enough, we switched it on and it worked the next day. And it was like Japan's economic miracle being shown to me in my living room. Superior Japanese manufacturing right there. So that's the lens I've always sort of taken my relationship with Japan, as I guess the humorous approach. But it also has a value to it, in that I appreciated all that went into making that amazing product. Maybe I didn't understand it quite at that time, but it affected my relationship with. I met quite a few friends, and the most influential of which was a college friend named Masa. And when I went to college in Los Angeles, he was an exchange student from Keio University, and he was a rugby mate too. And he blew every stereotype we as regular Americans had of Japanese being quiet and hard to talk to or conservative. He was just gregarious and funny and approachable and didn't speak any English, so it didn't matter, and was just really popular around campus and became a great friend. And he taught me a lot about Japan. It took me to Dodgers games when Nomo Mania was going on in the 90s. If you don't know, Nomo was the original Japanese pioneer in baseball to go over to the major leagues in the 90s. And if you think Otani's big now with the Dodgers, he was 10 times bigger. It was really something. So I didn't understand any of this. So that was where I got on the path to end up coming to Japan. And how I got further, it led me down the path, fortunately or unfortunately, but to becoming a salaryman. And there I am, there's proof. There's me in my factory uniform in Fukuoka on a one-year assignment, and joking around a little bit. But you can see I was walking the walk, not just talking the talk, as I had to work in a factory and follow the rules there, and bow the right way to take a day off to my boss. And so many incidents happened, and it's I depict the good, the bad, and everything in the middle in the book that happened, and you learn a tremendous amount. about the culture this way. But a lot of painful episodes too that are kind of I try to present in a funny and entertaining way. But I like to say I lived 4 lifetime employment. I worked 4 lifetimes over a 9-year time span. It's that's a Senryu poem actually. That's if you notice, that's a 3-line 5-7-5 syllable Senryu style poem. So I made that sort of into the idea here that I crammed a lot into 9 years. So where I also looked, so I started, I mentioned I was a journalist previously. During this period, when I first got here, I started doing some articles for CNN. They had a travel blog. And the first story that eventually started me on the path to write the book and is in the book was about me failing on the Japanese driver's license test 7 times. I failed the driving course exam 7 times. Each for the most mysterious reason that would never be told to me. And, that was confusing, and I turned it into an article, and then I wrote another article, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna, instead of giving this to them, I'm gonna put it on my own blog. Then the blog I started put me down the path to have this content where I thought I had something that could be a book. But I didn't know how to write. I mean, I was used to writing articles, but a book is another thing. And so I looked for inspiration more from a classical sense for me, studying literature. Orwell was always one of my favorite writers. And he had an early book called Down and Out in Paris and London, where he was an immigrant, an English guy in Paris. And he was there as a dishwasher before he became a famous writer. It's his memoir. And I think if you read that, you can see the parallels to salaryman life in the traditional sense of being just that last sentence where your life is, you're hardly conscious of the exterior world. Your Paris is shrunk to the hotel, the metro, a few bistros, and your bed. That is what it felt like commuting 2 hours each way to a factory. I felt my life was reduced to those things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing sometimes, given how great the service is here and the food and everything. So his was more about poverty, his book, but it was the immigrant experience and a different work culture. And he was a dishwasher, or plongeur, as they call it in French. Excellent read, but it told me it gave me a model to set about turning a bunch of independent blog entries with illustrations into a tied together book with chapters that tie together. The thing that was different was he had a plot to his book. Mine, I had to come up with something different. I didn't set it to a plot with a beginning, middle, and end. I decided to turn it into a guidebook about how to become a salaryman. Here's the steps, sort of a guidebook to that. And that's how I had to come up with at least a somewhat truthful, funny way that made sense from a reader point of view to have a thread. And so coming here, you realize I called this all the Japanese manners wrapped up into one word, or one phrase. I called it manner mode. Like the mode you put your phone to on the train, that's manner modo. I needed a phrase to call all these manners that I need to learn, the rules of a company. I just called it manner mode, and that's how I define it in the book. The first step to having the energy to learn all that, I found out I was exhausted by the time it was like 11 a.m. every day because of all this, and commuting, wasn't used to it. And I noticed my coworkers were all exhausted too, but they had one big difference. They equalized all this with the ability to nap anywhere, anytime. And on the trains, at their desk like that, which I could never master. And in a nursery school with kids running around, I noticed napping. I just couldn't believe, as an American, we're afraid to get robbed or maced or worse if you're napping in public. And I completely lacked the instinct to do that. So first chapter of the book, I thought, I need to learn how to nap to have the energy to do all the other things in this book that help me assimilate to work culture. It's more about taking care of your body, really, it's a funny way of saying that. But that gave me the structure to start with. So, okay, now that I have the ability to nap, what do I need to learn that's especially difficult for an American? Mottai nai is such a fabric of Japanese culture I saw, not being wasteful, ecological and using only what you need. All those things is a great part of the upbringing here that is completely un-American. it's like you don't learn those things in most, especially in the Midwest. It's just a lot of space and run around in a huge yard, and you have a huge garbage can, and you just throw things in there, and like all that doesn't work here. You need to, compartmentalize things and be organized. And so, my son, there in that top left, I don't know if you remember this, Hugo, but in the middle of the winter, my favorite pastime as a former Chicagoan is my long, hot winter bath, or shower, I should say. 10 minutes or longer, just warming me up. Not so in Japan. It's wasteful. You can't do that here. I was pounded into me. My son reminded me, "Mottai nai," don't do that. So, yeah, that's a little a memory for you there, Hugo. And I learned that people, suburban life especially, you use your bath water after you take a bath with a tube that goes into your clothes washer to conserve the water. And I just thought that's amazing, actually. That didn't bother me. It was more like just an eye-opener that there was this kind of level of, but absolutely difficult to master, because your instincts as an American are just not used to doing that, the discipline, the energy needed. I won't even get into toilet paper and using too much of it, and who told me I did that. So you'll have to read the book for that one. So the middle part of the book, I get into more topics that are trends I learned across working I should mention, or I did in a couple slides earlier, four companies in 9 years, and a lot of them had this in common. A lot of our suppliers were American or European companies, and they would come over periodically to negotiate their terms with us. And it became what I could just say is just sort of the weaponization of Japanese hospitality. They hosted these suppliers, and I was sort of this double agent. The Americans looked at me, or the Europeans looked at me as like a compadre who was going to help them through this trip and be on their side, help them negotiate. And my bosses were suspicious of my loyalties, probably, and watching what I was doing at every minute. But they would wine and dine these foreign visitors, usually male in this case, and they would take them out late at night, the night before a big negotiation meeting the next morning. And I was always watching these foreign suppliers just eating up the hospitality until late at night. And I thought, this isn't going to be pretty tomorrow. And it usually wasn't. They were off their game. They would be sweating. They'd be sweating and hungover, and cut themselves shaving, and And I laugh that it's like an asset that should be listed in intangible assets on the balance sheet of some of these companies. It was interesting to see this from the double agent perspective. I also met a lot of unforgettable people who helped me and I learned a lot from, as you know, in all over Japanese society, but especially in traditional companies, the senpai, kohai, the mentor, protege thing is all over the place, and very important to adapting. And one guy that took me under his wing was this elderly, I shouldn't say elderly, he was in his mid-60s, late 60s probably. And he was a contract worker now at that company. He was an engineer who had lived through the bubble era as an electronics engineer and was really talented and had been a vice president of a major Japanese electronics company before. The decline of that industry, he was a microcosm of that. He lost that job in then probably the early 2000s, and then was just hanging on as a contractor, but still loved what he was doing and still worked like he was a salaryman in his 20s with the energy level, and the smoking and the drinking too went along with that. And bilingual and a very global guy. But I should say when he drank, he became very patriotic and wanted a lot of the foreign companies out of Japan. So it was kind of a double, very global when sober. And then when he was drinking, he became a hardcore patriot. So that was an interesting transformation. But we called him my Japanese colleagues, who were the younger colleagues, called him the carnivore in Japanese. I think they were calling it Nikushoku Danchi, or like Soushoku Danchi is the name for herbivore men, a little derogatory now. These younger salarymen now are called that because they're not, they don't have the energy or the passion to work as hard as their predecessors, and so they called it. My coworkers named him this, behind his back, the carnivore, because of his hardcore salaryman style. But I went on many trips with him, learned a lot about what to do, what not to do. He told me, I'll give you one story that tells you something about, gives you one real story from old Tokyo. He grew up in the slums of post World War II Tokyo, and one time he told me he remembers as a kid going to one of those kiosks on the street that were all over the place then, and not a lot of luxury around then. It was poor, and to have meat in your curry was rare, he said. But this stand managed to have a lot of juicy meat and was really popular. And he told me when he was standing in line one day, this is like 1951, the wind blew the curtain back and he saw a dead cat sitting there. And the meat was coming from a cat. So he just had all sorts of stories. The one that really made me think, though, about how deep this guy's experience was he told me about his decline of his career, honestly. And he said the only thing he would reveal about it, really, he got let go by his company after being a VP, which is unusual for that generation. It was a really bad financial situation in the late 90s and early 2000s. And he just said he still went to all the conventions overseas like he used to, even after he lost the job. And he said he remembers seeing an American entrepreneur who kept failing in his startup companies, but every time he saw him, he was wearing a nicer suit. And he didn't understand how, he just explained that's the difference between our countries and business. Is the US, you keep getting that opportunity. Failure is sometimes good or even viewed as a learning lesson. And he shook his head and just muttered when he says every time he's wearing a nicer suit, and I thought, boy, what a great way to put it. That's almost a sinew itself, very deep. We have had another unforgettable character. I'll go fast through this one, who my colleagues called RoboCop or Robocop. And let's just say he was not a good mentor. He was a guy who sort of, I would say, he compensated for lack of ability with, he just punished you with company rules to make up for it, and drove a lot of the team crazy. And I should say incompetence like that is not any more rampant here than in the US, but I do find the manners and the culture prevent people or companies from dealing with it in a confrontational way that is productive. They'll just let it fester. And so I think he was a good example of that. And he almost created a new economic theory, which I half jokingly put in the book, which is that all the lost productivity from having to follow that, bad management, I thought, well, I think it converts into something productive for the economy with all the drinking it makes you do to blow off the steam of following that. And so that's my economic theory of and I always laugh when people say, oh, Japan's economy, is it really that bad? I go, you don't really feel it. You see this amazing retail culture and a lot of retail industries, and I think that might be part of it. This is probably too much to get into, but going from privatized U.S. healthcare to Japanese, sort of universal healthcare, amazing as far as the preventative care you get here is quite astounding. I think some Americans here would agree. The health checkups here, you get some just amazing that you would never get in the U.S. without paying extra for. But you had to pay for it. At a traditional company, you take your medical test in front of everybody wearing a gown under harsh fluorescent lights, whether the gown barely covers your underwear or not. It's really communal, the way you have to do it, and the way I had to do it anyway in these traditional companies. So there was a price to pay, but ultimately good for the health. So I have, lastly, I think on the book, a very funny reader moment for me, very heartwarming, and just what you do this for. And there's a reader in the audience here who sent me this, who is from Dallas, Texas, when he was reading this book a few years ago, and he's here tonight. He moved to Japan. He had emailed me saying he had enjoyed the book, and he went to an izakaya in Dallas, and he saw they copied my illustration on their menu board and sent me the photo, which to me blew my mind. Some people were like, "Well, why don't you ask for money for that?" You know, why didn't they ask permission? I was just blown away that anyone did that. I just wish they could have sold the book. That would have been nice. But it was a great reader moment. I made an attempt to spin off a manga from the Salaryman book a couple years after it, and Meishida here translated the English into the Japanese version for me. I stalked him at his comedy show after I saw this really great Salaryman stand-up act he had, and I thought he's the man for the job. I only did one digital issue of it. I just wanted to see if I could do it, storyboard it, and if the stories in the book could make a good manga. I think it did, but if anybody who sees this has ideas on how to do more, it's a difficult, it's much different than writing a book. It's a lot more investment in the artwork, and it's a little more planning that goes into the making into a series. Okay, so we're okay on time, I think. So now I'm gonna get into the next book after The Salaryman, which is an illustrated joke book based on the Senryu poem style called Salarymanhood, which will be out in the next month or two. So that's the cover of it. And you can see that Japanese title is Salaryman, American Salaryman Senryu. And inspiration for this came from an existing, some of you have probably heard of this contest. I'm sure the Japanese in the audience know that about the Salaryman Senryu contest from Daiichi Life Insurance Company. Every year, it's been going on for 40 years or so. Every day, employees send their amateur Senryu to them, and they publish the best ones. And I've just been an avid reader of this for a long time. I think they're hilarious and a great way to study Japanese too. But this one caught my eye. One of the winning poems, I forgot what year, but what do you want to be when you grow up? The child answers, a lifetime employee. And I just thought, oh, that's it. That's so perfect. You can feel the depth of disappointment in the answer from the child. And Salaryman wrote that, and you're thinking, the man doesn't want his child to have to do this. I think it's tongue in cheek though, but that was I always had that in my mind, and I put some of those Senryu in my Salaryman book. That was my model, and I just wanted to put a foreign angle to it with illustrations that accompany it and tell more of a story, and very importantly, have a Japanese translation to go with it. And so Meishida here here's an example of the book format on the interior. So the 2-page spread on the left is the Japanese poem with the English poem, and then there's the romanji, the how to read it in Japanese, and the scene on the right that the poem describes. And this really happened during an earthquake at a dinner I was having, where we teased the guy after the earthquake. You didn't even run. You held onto your whiskey bottle from and it was a joke in the office for the next week. And so I thought this is a great. But I love the what is this? The English translation of this, the best I could, is in these turbulent times. Rather than protecting yourself, protect your alcohol. And I thought that Meishida's wordplay on that was really clever. And there's a lot of that in the book where he takes. It's not a direct translation. It's just filtered through a different lens and just tells it in a funnier, in a way that lands better in Japanese. And so on the translation, what I told you again, what hooked me on finding him as the translator was a YouTube act he did years ago on his life as a former salaryman. That just really got me interested in having him do this. So he's going to give you a little idea what that. Are you going to do that? Do you want to do
stand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to give you a little glimpse of what why I wanted to have a Japanese voice and a Japanese version of the senyu in it. So if you want to,
okay.
go right ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. A short stand-up.
Please welcome to the stage, all the way from Tokyo, Japan, Mishida! Yay! So guys, thank you very much. So anyway, so please make some noise for Mike-san! Yeah, congratulations! Yeah, thank you very much. So I used to be a typical Japanese employee. Oh, it's me? It's me?
That's you.
Okay, thank you very much. So anyway, I used to be a typical Japanese employee. And during my college, I majored in philosophy. Thank you very much. Of course, I quit my job because the meaning of work had to become unclear to me, right? So I went to the UK to do comedy.
Wow.
Thank you for the reaction. Much better than my parents gave me. Thank you very much. So when I was a Japanese salaryman, you guys know, of course, salaryman, you know, a Japanese corporate slave. I was very busy, you know. I pretended to work so hard. So I'd get stressed. So I'd have to go out and drink. Then I'd have no money. So I'd have to work again to make money so I can drink again. I cannot tell if I'm a workaholic or an alcoholic. Yes. Yes, that's not a joke, okay? And the thing I hate the most is having meetings. My company had many long meetings. The problem is many people join, but they never get to the end. So during meetings, I always felt like I was on the Yamanote line. Who knows the Yamanote line? Right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a famous circular line. It takes 1 hour to get back to the same station. The same as our meetings, right? So I said to my boss bravely, I think our meetings are too long and it is inefficient. And my boss said, okay, let's have a meeting about that. We discussed it for 2 hours, but we couldn't find an answer. So we decided to have another meeting again next week to work out why the previous meeting was so inefficient. Yes. And I worked at an internet company. We hosted a digital transformation seminar. And guess how we sent the invitations? By fax machine. And registrations also by fax machine. You know, that's like eco campaign, right? And handing out paper flyer that say, stop wasting paper, right? Stop wasting paper, right? That's not a joke anyway, guys. And my boss was really, really strict about time. When I was just 2 minutes late for a meeting, my boss got angry with me and shouted, hey, what's wrong with you? Being on time is a minimum for a worker. I cannot believe you. But when I tried to go back home on time, he also said, hey, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well? That's why I pretended to work so hard, even though I had nothing to do. That's why AI will never take Japanese people's jobs, because AI cannot replace what doesn't exist. Right? Japanese people, please make some noise.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much. We Japanese employees never worry about AI because we are really skilled at creating unnecessary work. Okay, let's have a meeting. Okay, that's my time. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the meeting to schedule the next meeting's date. Yes, understood. So that you can see we have where this runs together with some of the themes of the book. Thanks for doing that. That's great. And he not only can do the act in English, that is amazing to do it in a foreign language stand-up, but I'll run you through a few more examples from the book where he translated the situation. This happened to me. We were moved, our office was moved solely because the president wanted the view of Mount Fuji from his office, way out to Atsugi area. and every employee hated it. So we had to just shut up and take that. And I think that what these are designed to do is to make you, for a minute there, think, wait a second, how can somebody get away with that? In the U.S., you would never be able to get away with that. There's a top-down level of that I witnessed at every company, in the traditional companies, I should mention, where this kind of thing happens regularly. And as part of the book, what's the translation here? How do you read that?
The haiku is like rhythm is very important, Like kaso item, Japanese people, kaso. Kaso means countryside. Item means like a moving. It's like a very rhythmical phrase, and it means like moving like a very countryside. But it's rhythm, because when it comes to haiku, the rhythm is very important.
Yeah, I noticed that about a lot of the transitioning from English to Japanese. Wordplay and rhythm was really important to the Japanese version, and English, it's just twists and turns, and the sound of the syllables, and finding words that can replace a 2-syllable word with 1-syllable word, because every senryu follows a 5-syllable, 7-syllable, 5-syllable structure. That's really difficult to find the right word without wasting syllables. So that's more on my mind when I'm writing them. But wordplay in Japan, I noticed, was a big one. I think this is one of your more favorite ones, and this happened to me. I think a lot of foreigners have had this. Some of the prettiest flowers you see in Japanese flower shops. What are they called again? Those funeral flowers. Forgetting the name of them, but they're so pretty. And nobody, of course, comes up to the foreigner and tells them not to buy it, because I'm there on Valentine's Day, obviously, and I'm buying funeral flowers for my partner, and not knowing it. Made that mistake many times. Hajime date? How do you? What's the?
初デート、物価を送り、物価なんて物価でいいんですよね。
物価。
物価ですよね。ありがとうございます。物価を送り、五輪中。五輪中 is very, for me it's very funny because it means rest in peace. 五輪中. And also you and for dead people, 五輪中. Yeah, I like this one.
All right. Painful for me to experience. All right, we'll end with this one. So this happened to me all the time in the U.S. I would go on dinners in the U.S. on business trips with my Japanese boss, and we'd be eating and drinking, and he'd pay, and he'd only tip 10%. But the waiter would stare at me, not him. Like, what are you doing? Because he blamed me. The waiter blamed me for not telling him how to tip in the U.S. where 20% is the norm. And I could never figure out the reason why most Japanese think 10% is, or a lot of them that I worked with thought 10% is normal. And where does the source of knowledge come from? And I don't know where that comes from, but it caused me a lot of evil eyes, let's just say, coming from waiters wanting more of a tip. Okay, so we're running short on time. It looks like we want to have some Q&A. I want to end with a final word on self-publishing. As I mentioned, I've self-published all these books working with great collaborators like the illustrator Yoshida and Meishida here for the translation, editing myself and designing. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge that goes into self-publishing, and the platforms keep getting more advanced. And doing it from Japan offers its own complexities. And I've just about to publish my father's autobiography that I've worked on for 2 years. From Japan, interviewing him over the phone and ghostwriting it for him and designing it. So I think there's a lot of foreigners here in Japan, residents who've been here a while, who have great stories to tell, but might not know all these tools are available or want to write it themselves. So I'd love anybody to contact me who's interested in doing their own book. There's some foreigners like me who know how to do it here. Michael back here, Pronko, is a very well-established novelist here, Tokyo Mysteries. Michael Pronko, who is a source of expertise on this as well. So it's a field that is daunting to dip into. So any chance to give advice, I'd love to do it. And yeah, that's it. I'd love to hear any questions you have.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm not a salaryman, but I've heard these stories, and I know what it is like to be foreign, like one foreigner in a huge space of Japanese. But so the floor is open for questions. You can come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and ask your question. Anybody? Anybody from the floor? Okay. Right. Okay, first. And then, yes, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sean.
Hey,
Good
Sean.
job.
Thank you.
Funny book. So I have 2 questions. Is it okay to
Yeah.
ask 2
Sure,
questions?
Yeah.
sure.
Should I ask them together or one at a time? Which do you prefer? Will you be able to remember both?
I think so.
Okay. First question, maybe an easy one. What's the difference between senryu and haiku? Because even both of you are using them interchangeably, but I suspect there's a very big difference between the two.
Oh, yes, yes. I usually skip over that when I jump into the salarymanhood part of this. Senryu, yeah, they're the sibling of haiku. Haiku are about lofty subjects like nature and season change, and it's sort of like the preacher's sermon. And senryu, same structure, but are sort of like the congregation's thought bubbles, I want to say, above their heads, know, what's going on in real life, human foibles. So it's a 3-line poem structure, both of them, senryu and
They're
haiku.
both 5-7-5, is that right?
Traditionally, they're 5 syllables, 7-5. That's the traditional way to do it. But I stuck to that for the senryu.
Cool. And then this comes up a lot in my work recently, is in kind of the entertainment side. This new thing called microdramas or vertical entertainment. Have anyone heard of this yet?
No.
So basically, it's the art of telling a story 1 minute at a time to match people's length of their attention span, right? And now it's gone crazy in China, but I was just thinking these stories would be the perfect format for that type of media. Have you ever thought of changing these stories into a more video format or something like that, or telling the stories in that media?
Yes, I've done.
Medium, sorry.
I have, and he can feel free to answer too. I have not done my own YouTube videos. I've been a guest on his YouTube show, which is much longer than a minute. It's about 5 minutes or something, the show I was on with him. But it gave me an appetite for doing that. And I see what you mean, that these little vignettes lend themselves well to a quick setup and sort of punchline at the end.
Well, if you ever come up with a screenplay, let me know. We can talk.
All right.
Okay, over there.
Hi, I'm Catherine. Mike and I used to work together at one of our workplaces. Mike,
I did too, by the way.
Yes.
well done. First question is, well, it's question and suggestion. So aside from working with somebody Japanese like Meshida-san, have other Japanese people read your book, and how have they reacted?
Yeah.
Because humour is a real way to communicate, oh, that's exactly how it is in Japan, and people maybe never realise. So how has that been? And also my suggestion is to do an audio book, the both of you doing maybe different parts would be so much fun.
That's a really interesting idea, that last part. The answer on the Japanese reaction to my book, I'll give you one on each side, positive and negative. So, of course, they have to read English, so that limits it. But I had one who was a former journalist colleague of mine here from Japan, was a Japanese woman journalist, and she read the book, and she's an author herself also, and she wrote a very heartwarming review, called it. It made her angry, laugh out loud, and everything in between to see that this is what really goes on in some of these traditional companies. But said you can tell I think to paraphrase her, my love for the country, though, is always present within all of that. So I took that as a really great endorsement. On the negative side, a younger Japanese former colleague of mine read the book and saw my interview on his show after that. And I sent him the YouTube and then sent him the book. And all he said was, you should be more appreciate. You should appreciate more. You shouldn't. He just thought talking about bringing anything to light like that at all is unsavory, and was very hardcore about that. So that was tough because it kind of was a chasm between what had been a friendship. So that does happen, I guess, in the creative work. I learned. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering if I could ask, is this salaryman culture still in Japan? I'm just thinking, I've been in Japan for a long time myself, so I can relate to it, but I was just thinking, is it still like this now?
Well, I left the Salaryman Brotherhood in 2017. As far as, I was working in, again, to say that again, some of the most traditional places you could imagine. Even he was shocked, he had worked in Japanese offices, and he couldn't. It was places where we were doing the calisthenics in the morning in the office, the Rajio Taiso, in an office, white collar, not construction, and it was that kind of place. I think that's still around. But those are just some of those are just ceremonial. And they might be looser now around the edges than they were in the places. I think it is changing, and job hopping is much more common now. Right. But I still keep in touch with some of these people from that company, and they tell me it's as traditional as it ever was in some of these places. So I think it's dying, though. It's a dying breed.
Yeah, because maybe the younger generation doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Milton, do you have any? I saw you shaking your head. Do you have any comments? Please, yeah.
I have plenty of questions, actually, but I'll just ask, the one that really concerns me is your book goes about explaining your experience. Now, nobody's going to be in the office or near the office with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth. So time has changed so quickly. When I used to run an office with 35 salesmen in their little cubicles, smoking was allowed in those days, and everybody had a air cleaner on their desks. And it was okay, but I don't think this not the case anymore. So you say traditional companies doing exercises, if you really ask them why they're doing it, they're saying to limber up the muscles before you start working, and to wake the people up before they start working.
Yeah.
That's their reason, and I think that's a good reason.
Yeah.
But a lot of them have to work these days. So, in your next book, where are you going to start drawing the line of your salaryman experience versus the new trend now to keep up with times?
Yes.
That's my question, because it's a good thing, but only old folks like us are going to understand it.
Right.
So you're sort of cutting off the younger readership. So that's my question. So, you can continue your Salaryman series, but I think you've got to start blending in.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's great insight. Much appreciated, the honesty. And I should say, I think I've milked this subject as far as it can be milked. I'm not planning on writing more. The Senryu book, if it is popular, I'll keep doing them, and we'll modernize them, because that's what Senryu the Salaryman Senryu contest does too. They cover modern topics like COVID and women entering the birth rate problem and all these other things to keep it fresh to the times. So I think that's what I would, if I was going to continue doing the Senryu, I would modernize the topics a little and not make them all written by me. I think it needs other voices. So I will say though that I liked the calisthenics in the morning. I just felt self-conscious about it. And purely as a newcomer, I felt weird doing it in a suit. And so it's just like the healthcare here. It was good for me, but I didn't have to like it. You know, it's like I take it as a growing opportunity, but you don't always like the what you have to do that. So I thought exercise could always be a good thing. But I hear the point about younger generations need to see themselves represented a little bit in this subject. Thank you, though.
Yep.
All
Oh,
right.
yes, sorry. Yeah.
My name is Hiro Mitsuchi, a retired university professor. And I enjoyed your talk. And just one question that on your flyer, it says it's all part of the salaryman's experience. But for foreigner in this environment, then you said there is also a lot to learn. And I just wondered, what are the things you have to learn? After objectively evaluating the cultural norm of salaryman, do you think there's still things to learn seriously?
Yes, yeah, on a personal level. I have to admit, thank you for the question. I have to admit, I wasn't always, and usually was not professionally satisfied in a lot of these stops. But I learned a ton of the language being immersed in that environment every day, being pushed to improve my Japanese, motivated by them, and seeing I learned about of course, the teamwork and just the way relationships work. Senpai, kohai, what does that look like? How do you learn to be a good listener and close your mouth sometimes? Those are things for an American that are hard to, we're told to speak up at all times, and I had to find a middle ground. So when I talk about learning, I think I was finding that middle ground, but I couldn't lose my identity, and that was a part of the experience. Was I felt I lost the identity of myself by being too immersed in it and not having an outlet, because I wasn't happy professionally. And so I think, that's something I learned, was that you need a balanced life. And I didn't, Salaryman life is not a very balanced life traditionally, but they all have good outlets usually. I found a lot of the better people I worked with managed to have a work-life balance, not in the American sense, but in the Japanese sense. They found some other way to do it, whether it was doing something with colleagues that looked like work but was really fun to build camaraderie. That's their balance. So I learned that can look like something else in Japan.
Any other? Just wondering, you were still working for a Japanese company, right? So what's the change? Do you see a change, or is it a different? Have you fitted in better, or?
I'm working for a startup now, an AI startup that's Japanese owned, from a university, and it's a new company, 3 years old, and I'm one of the oldest people, and I am the oldest person, I think, in this company, which is a shock. Totally different, obviously very casual. But I still see those things that are just part of Japanese upbringing, and these are academics a lot at this company, and that I recognize from my days as a salaryman. The way the decisions are always made before the meeting, the nemawashi, I think they call it, making the discussions and decision before you have the meeting. I even see that sometimes on display here. So it's those little things survive. I think it's worked for this country. So I think that's why it survives.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
So I have a question because I came to Japan in 2014, and some of Mike's stories kind of resonate, especially
can we have your name?
My name is Lauren. So I came here 2014, and then when I first read the book, some of the stories are really resonate to me, especially the nomikai and the meishi, like watashi suru. And now I work in a global company, American company. Some of the Japanese culture still remained. For example, over time, nomikai. I guess my question is, it's interesting to see a foreign company still remain a bit of Japanese culture because most of the colleagues are still Japanese and they speak great English. I'm just wondering, because some of the stories are still very interesting, what inspired you to, a next book is send you instead of continue? Another Salaryman book of the story because the COVID changed everything. One of the questions you put on the slide is, when you grow up, what do you want to be? Which is seishain. But I work in HR. Interesting nowadays, the younger generation, they don't want to be seishain anymore. They want to be part-time, more freedom. So I'm wondering, would it be any chance that you could combine your experience from the past? Because I personally think what happened in the past in the Japanese cultures combined with younger generation would be an interesting chemistry. The younger generation see freedom as their goal. Mm-hmm. They don't care about that, economy, money issue. So first questions, why are you thinking to, next book is Send You instead of second episode of Salaryman? And is there any chance we could see Salaryman book episode 2, combined with younger generation?
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the Salaryman was a memoir about a period of my life. So it'd be hard to duplicate that and write anything that dives in, that connects to that very much because I'm not in that world so much anymore. But I did want to, I think there's themes there that could be turned into other mediums, like the manga I tried and hope to continue. And then the Senju book is something in between. It's like a comic book almost. I loved a comic book series in the 80s and 90s called The Far Side. And it was a huge hit, syndicated everywhere. And those were very deep, and you read them and you laugh, but then you think deeper about how weird it is or funny and intellectual. It's an illustration with a short description. And I thought that's a perfect way to distill what happened in the book and keep it going. And I have a vision to make it more, have another try at a second edition of it where I have other people's Senju published in there, not just my own. Because I can only do so many, I think, about a memoir. You squeeze the sponge enough, you run out of material. I will say making a novel out of the Salaryman's story is what's next. I am going to write a novel that's set to a plot, a humorous one, of course. That's sort of where I'm at as far as the way I write, like a comedy, using characters like the carnivore I mentioned, to be a funny and inspiring, lighthearted, movie about the culture clash. So I'm not done touching on themes of that, but I think memoir style sequel is not in the works. It would be the novel, a story based on that.
Got it. Yes. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to close the evening. It was great fun, Michael.
Thank you.
And I really think that when Japan is changing and foreign workers are coming in, your book could probably be a lesson, about identity and being yourself.
Yeah.
So, so to say thank you, we have a one-year guest membership.
Oh, wow.
So please enjoy the club.
That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you very much. Amazing.
And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.